So once again, this is Paul Cronin. I'm CEO of Successful Transition Planning. Thanks for tuning in today. We're going to talk about changing lives, expanding your services, learn business and personal transition consulting. And I'm going to be explaining some of the programs and books and also really walking through what some of our core messaging is to baby boomer business owners, executives, and professionals. So this is who we are. This is me, Paul Cronin. This is my partner, Jack. We are the alpha and the omega of the baby boom generation. And, I had a long corporate career. I then had a couple of different businesses. I sold one in June of 2008, promptly lost my identity, and picked up some consulting work and then started looking around for what I wanted to do next. And I ended up meeting Jack at a networking event, and he asked me what I did for work. And I said, well, I help companies grow faster. I'm a sales and marketing guy. Is that something you're interested in? And he said, well, maybe. And I said, well, what do you do? And Jack said, well, you know how people get to a point in life and, maybe they leave their career or sell their company and they're not really sure what they're going to do next. And I kind of laughed to myself and said, yeah, I definitely understand that. And he said, well, I have a process that fixes that. And I thought to myself, well, this is fascinating. So we exchanged business cards and we started meeting for coffee. And over the course of a year of meeting for coffee and trying to understand, really started to share his story. He also had a long corporate career, very different business. He was in the orthopedics, selling hips and knees. I came from the retail wholesale world. He also started a company and he had some nice success with it. And then he suffered a terrible personal tragedy, the loss of his wife, and left him as a single dad. So it was partly as a result of that, and partly as a personal journey he had been going on in terms of exploring, why am I here? And even before his wife was sick, he started studying at Harvard Divinity School. And out of all that work and that personal experience of what transitions are like and what personal transformations are like, he developed a whole set of theories and programs. And ultimately, when we decided to join forces, we took sort of his one process and we started breaking it down into a modular set of programs and then created a methodology. And the methodology is what we teach people all over the world. So this is just a little recap of what we're all about. We're recognized in sort of the exit planning space as a leader in this particular aspect of transition work, and we have now trained people in the U.S., Australia, Canada, South Africa, and the United Kingdom. These are some reasons why people like to choose us. The programs simply work. We have testimonials, we have video testimonials. It really helps people get unstuck, and particularly people who are partners in firms or are business owners. Getting stuck isn't just an inconvenience. It can be actually very damaging financially, and you can have very damaging repercussions to other people around you, employees, coworkers, partners, your spouse, and so forth. So having a process, a set of programs to help people address their fears, really work through that. Other reason people choose us is we have a variety of programs, so it's not just one size fits all. We offer marketing tools to help create lead nurturing and help you get involved in this, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just kind of use what we use. And then we have a set of all proprietary assessments, docs, and tools that are all stored in the cloud. So you've always got the most updated information. You don't have to worry about, is my training manual from 2 years ago still valid? Well, you can always download the newest one if that's what you really need. And then for those of you who want to look at ads, we have ads for some of our online programs. We have a process to track all that through a dashboard. When advisors come to us, or coaches and consultants for that matter, there's sort of three levels. There's an affiliate, which pretty much sounds what it is like an Amazon affiliate. You can learn to understand what a couple of programs are. You can offer them on your website, and then there's an exchange of information. We let you know who they are. Transition advisor is sort of our base level of training, where generally people who come from they have an active practice in, perhaps financial services or accounting or law or business consulting, and they have clients on a periodic basis that do get stuck. Again, it could be an executive, it could be a business owner, or a professional of some sort. And they want to help that person get unstuck with some short coaching programs, some assessments, and that helps the advisor help the client move forward. Now, the highest level of transition planning consultant, where you learn all of that, but then you get into the real meat of our programs and really help people follow what we call the framework for purposeful living, which is what is next. So this is a graphic that essentially it shows what our core deliverable. And when many people are in this stage of life, late career, if you will, they have spent so much time building their career, raising families and so forth, and then they suddenly get to this place where, if I'm going to be leaving, what am I going to do? And more importantly, are the things that I'm going to be doing in my life actually give me a sense of purpose? Let's face it, you can keep really busy, running errands. For that matter, as one person said, I can keep really busy taking a ball of string and cutting it into, equal lengths, 12 inches at a time. Right? I'm very busy, but it's not very meaningful. So what the framework does is it really helps people start to think through, what am I going to do to keep myself physically healthy? What sort of activities make sense for me? And we help people brainstorm and then narrow that down and end up choosing, what is a primary way to keep myself physically healthy? Because we know as we are aging, we're living longer throughout the world. And, if we're going to be retiring, so to speak, in our 60s, which is an awful long time before sort of those traditional ages. Even if you're not thinking about retiring, you want to be as healthy as you can for as long as you can. Many people get tremendous intellectual stimulation from their work. You have to replace that in some form if you're not going to be working 40, 50, 60 hours a week anymore. And, Sudoku and crossword puzzles are not going to cut it. So we really challenge people to think about other ideas. Yes, there can be book clubs, there can be, classes, there can be lots of different ways to get your brain engaged. And when you do that, your life can actually become more meaningful to you. Many people think of this stage of life as, I'm going to go sailing, I want to go golfing, or gardening, what have you. And that's all great. But we challenge people to think about others. What about the creative side? What about art, music, dance, or poetry? I have an aunt who liked to play with sort of poetry throughout her life. And as she got into her 70s, she started participating in poetry slams, of all things, which I thought was fantastic. Many of us are married, of course, and we have life partners, and it's very important to maintain that connection. It's really easy as you go through life and you're raising kids and so forth, and then the kids are out of the house. Well, now how do you guys stay connected? Because if you don't find ways to stay connected to your spouse or partner, unfortunately, that's how separation and divorce occurs. It's important to maintain activities with your family. They don't have to be grand vacations, but just some regular activities where you're touching base with those people that are important to you, however you define family. And as we age, for those of us who's cared for aging parents, it's really important to have family, all right, or to have people you can depend on, and who can depend on you as we all sort of age, hopefully as gracefully as we can. You have to figure out where you're going to live. It's very common for people to get this stage of life. Do they want to downsize? Others want to build a dream house. Others may be fortunate enough to have two homes. So we've always wanted to, have a place, in the desert. We always wanted a place by the ocean, in the mountains, what have you. How do you choose that? Where do you actually go? Is it, in your home country? Is it someplace else? You have to create social connections. Most of us get 80% of our social connection through workplace. Well, if you lose the social connection, you leave the workplace rather, you're losing those social connections. So you've got to find new ways, whether clubs, activities, faith-based, etc. And social, we are, as human beings, very social animals. And so we have to make sure we have a process of maintaining and creating new social connections. This is an opportunity to experience spirituality or faith. And, we don't preach any particular faith tradition, but could an opportunity for people to really understand, why am I here? Why are we all here? These are the big questions. And in many ways, the process of experiencing spirituality and faith really separates us in many ways from, all the other critters walking around on Earth. And the last area we ask people to explore is work. And we divide that in two. So there's what most people think of at this phase of life, where I'm going to volunteer more, I'm going to be more philanthropic. And that's terrific. The questions we ask is the time you're spending, or the organizations you're donating to, are they in alignment with what's important to you at this phase of life? Maybe you don't necessarily support the local youth soccer league because that's less important to you now than the food pantry. You really have to think through those things. We also encourage people to really think about income-producing work, and that's a very purposefully chosen phrase. For some people, it's part-time. For some people, it's retiring from the firm and then working 1 or 2 days a week, or being some sort of a consultant. For others, it's in a family situation where the generation one that may have founded the business, they're taking a back seat, but they have some other role and they get compensated for it. Still others decide to go the other route, and they may have had sort of a corporate career or not-for-profit career and said, oh, I'd like to start a small business. And if you have the financial wherewithal and the courage, that's great. So, and you put this all together, what it is it's an integrated way of living. And we believe as you use a framework, you can find a way to create a new sense of purpose in your life as you are migrating from whatever career or business you're in today. So this is a talk that I've given a number of times. I actually recorded it last week as a webinar, Retirement Journey, Discover What's Next. And as if you are an advisor, you would be given all of our talks, and you can use these as a vehicle to help educate and market this new set of services you're considering adding to your practice. So I wrote a blog post a while back. It says, is retirement a big fat lie? I got a lot of comments on it, which was really kind of fun. But, in our society, in many societies around the world, there's sort of this idea, here's work, right? We're like Sisyphus, pushing the rock up the hill, right? And then Friday, comes down, and then boom, back on Monday, it's back at the bottom of the hill. And the only alternative to that is retirement. The golden years, sailing off into the sunset, golf, gardening, grandkids, the 3 Gs, as I like to say. And that's it. Those are the two choices. And for some people, it's, I can't stand work. Well, I guess that's what I'll do. But there's some people who work isn't necessarily a grind, and they look at retirement and go, well, that sounds like an interesting vacation, but, I don't really want to be on vacation. If that's all retirement is, maybe that's not for me. So here's 3 retirement stories. These are all true stories, and change the name to protect the innocent. So Jane was a woman who raised 6 kids. She was a stay-at-home mom for many years, and when her youngest got to school age, she started working part-time in retail. Her husband was a little bit older than her, and he worked for a very large corporation. And she was really enjoying. She liked to get out of the house. She, was a very sort of gregarious person. She loved interacting with people. And it was nice to sort of earning her own money after many years. Her husband, on the other hand, couldn't wait to get out of his business. It was kind of a business that was grinding him up. So he retired, and he really pushed her to leave. We want to travel. We want to go here. We want to do this. You've got to retire from that, job. So eventually she relented, and they did travel, and they did have some fun. But then her husband got cancer. And then 4 years later, he was dead. And I ran into Jane a little while after. I said, Jane, how are you doing? And she really startled me, and she said, Paul, retirement is kind of for the birds. There's not that much to do, all in all. I should have never quit that job. And now I'm too old to go back. Sue, on the other hand, was a woman who had many, many years in higher education. And when I first met her, she said, Paul, I've been working since I was 19 years old. My husband's quite a bit older than me. He's been retired for a while. He's been pressing me let's go. You promised me when you got to this age, we'd be able to do things. We'd be able to go more places. She said, well, there's a big difference between him and me. I get up in the morning and I have one, maybe two things to do. He, on the other hand, has a consulting practice. He has an adjunct professorship. He's out the door right after breakfast. Me, on the other hand, I think I've got something to do today. I turn around and it's 3 o'clock and I think to myself, I didn't get much done today. She was just unhappy with that. Fred was a gentleman I had met. He was a caretaker for a home that I was purchasing on Cape Cod. He was actually the father of the man who owned the house. And I went there on an inspection, and he was very nice. He was very proud. He showed me how he'd taken care of the lawns and the gardens and the flowers. And as we were sort of wrapping up the inspection, he turned to me. He said, Paul, I retired here after many years in the corporate world, and this really became my job. And, when you retire, every day is kind of like Sunday. And I guess now, if you buy this place, I'll be losing my job. And I think what we learn from these stories is, retirement is something that's a goal, and it's in many ways is sort of required in our society today. But retirement doesn't necessarily mean the same things that was envisioned. And now that's lasting so much longer when it was first created ages ago. There's an increasing number of people who are dissatisfied. Think of human life expectancy. Here's something I researched. For most of human history, globally, people only lived 30 or 40 years. And what took to the mid-20th century for most people globally, human life expectancy, to get to 50 years. Today, globally, it's around 60 or 70 years. In rich countries like the U.S. or England or what have you, it's 70 to 80 years. And in rich countries with really good diets and good gene pools, places like Japan, for example, like human life expectancy is over 80 years. In fact, there was a recent release of information, which was kind of shocking here in the United States, is that human life expectancy actually declined slightly. And apparently some of our dietary issues and some other things are catching up to us. So I guess the policy analysts will have to get into that. But the simple reality is, if the norm was to retire in your late 50s or early 60s, which is fairly normal in a lot of Western countries at least, you didn't live that long. So it didn't really matter. A lot of joke was, the first retirement systems were built so the people who retired, the people who were paying into retirement system died before they actually ever received it or only got it for a few years. Now, of course, people are retiring and they need to draw on funds for 20 or 30 years. This is a study done by the U.S. Department of Labor and released last year, and they just asked people, how do you spend your time? And the participants were logged minutes per day of a whole variety of activities, and I've summarized it here. Essentially, people for age 45 plus, working full time, they work about 8 hours, they sleep about 7 hours, and they have 9 hours for the rest of it. Retired folks, on the other hand, have 8 hours of sleep, which personally I'm kind of excited about to get a little more sleep. But they spend about 6 hours a day, which is a significant increase of what they do over those who are working full time, like double, watching TV and movies. And then they have 10 hours for everything else you need to do in life. So it's kind of sad to say that statistically, an awful lot of people are trading work for watching TV and movies, which to me doesn't sound very fulfilling or purposeful. And if you're wondering why people need a sense of purpose in life, there's a study done by the University of Wisconsin, and they looked at risk of mortality, and they studied a group of people over 14 years, so longitudinal. And what they learned from this is they ask a series of questions that evolved around, are people living with a sense of purpose, and do they have positive relations? So the people who answered those questions in the positive, at the end of the study, most of those people were alive. However, the people who at some point during the study felt that they weren't living with a sense of purpose or had a low sense of purpose or didn't have a lot of positive relations, most of those people were dead. So Why do you need purpose? Because purpose can save your life. We're, of course, aren't the only ones speaking about this. I'll let you read the slide there, but the story I like to share is about Lee Iacocca, who, of course, was a famous CEO who turned around Chrysler. Well, what a lot of people don't know is before he was with Chrysler, he was the head of Ford. In fact, he was responsible for the launch of the Mustang, which was the most successful launch of any new car in American automobile history. And yet, here's what happened to him shortly after that whole experience of launching the Mustang and having this tremendous success. Mr. Ford, the chairman, called him in one day, and Lee said, "Oh, what do you want to talk about?" Mr. Ford said, "You're fired." Iacocca was floored. He goes, why are you firing me? We just had the greatest success, the greatest launch ever of an automobile. And Ford reportedly said, "Because I just don't like you." Oof. Talk about a kick to the gut. Well, Iacocca eventually, was smart enough and well-known enough, and he turned Chrysler around, which was a huge American success story. But interestingly enough, this same experience, the roof fell in on him. Here he doesn't talk about who he was. When he left Chrysler, he had a similar experience. So he had never, even though he sort of known to have done this thinking and done this planning, he retired, American flags, everything else, and he hadn't done the planning because it's so easy to not think about it. And one of the things I love to say in the last quote from Peter Drucker there is, you really have to start thinking about the second half of your life long before you get into it. So there's three sort of ways people don't transition well, and this is oversimplification, but I don't want to think about it. And you probably heard people say that. Some people, I don't want to plan. Yeah, just take a leap. I'm just going to take a leap. I'm going to see what happens. And then, of course, the people who hyper-focus on that one thing, whatever that might be. Well, here's some visuals to imagine what that looks like. I don't want to think about it is the R&D method, repress and deny. I don't want to think about leaving. I don't want to think about selling my business. So if I don't see it, if I don't hear it, if I don't speak about it, well, I guess it's not going to happen. That's kind of like saying, well, I don't really like aging. If I don't think about aging, I won't age, which is nonsense. Others, of course, like to take a leap, like this fellow. All right? And I understand. It's great to take a leap. But what we're suggesting is before you take a leap, you're probably much better off to pack a parachute than a handkerchief. Right? I like to sometimes joke, Paul, what do you do for a living? I say, I help people pack parachutes. I have some interesting responses when I say that. And the third option is that guy. And what I mean by that guy is someone who's hyper-focused on the one thing, the golf, the gardening, the grandkids, right? Man or woman, right? The 3 Gs, I call that, by the way. And yet, an example of how it can be awful in some cases to be hyper-focused on the one thing is my partner went to his college reunion, and he was with some of his fraternity brothers, and their spouses were there. And at that point, people were talking about retiring and leaving, and there was this one fella who apparently had a very successful career, and he spent much of the evening talking about his lawn. And he was boring the hell out of everybody. He just apparently must have been a fabulous lawn. And so the joke I like to share, and this was told me by another CEO, he said, I know when I was thinking about retiring that I might get bored, but I sure don't want to become boring. And if you become that guy, guess what? Your fascination with your obsession, whatever that might be, may be interesting to you, but it may actually make you less interesting as a friend. So what's the golden years? This expression has been around for forever, right? Well, not really. The golden years, which is represented by the rocking chair, easing off into, whatever that is, sailing off to the sunset. The golden years is a marketing term, and it was created by Del Webb, who created some of the first retirement communities in the United States. Well, retirement communities are understood to exist today, but when he first introduced them, people didn't know what the heck a retirement community was. Right? It wasn't a nursing home or a retirement home. It was this different place. So he had to create a lifestyle called the golden years, all right, and all the things you've seen on TV and everything else. So he made so much money, right? He stopped using the golden years. He actually had trademarked it at one point. right? And then it entered the lexicon. But the thing is, there's a lot of people who think of that golden years and say, well, gee, that makes me kind of feel old or sound old. And I'm not old. I want to be vibrant. I want to be integrated. I want to really be, purposeful. So if that's the option, then maybe I'll just keep working. Well, for folks who say that, here's another visual. So here's a guy who said, I'm going to die at my desk. You've probably heard this. I'm going to go out boots first. Right? Nice desk, nice tie, pretty nice chair, right? Nicer than my chair, actually. But here's the thing, and it's a question I've asked people, and I encourage you to ask your clients about this, people who put that sort of resistance, and say, let me get this straight. You want to die at your desk? Okay. So is dying at your desk the best that you can do with the rest of your life? Is that it? That's as good as it gets? I would encourage you to ask that question. You may get some very interesting answers, but it really hits home. And my answer is, I sure hope that it's not the best you can do with the rest of your life. This kind of change, lack of preparation, also can create a lot of unhappy spouses and partners. You have Velcro husbands, right? Velcro husband is a classic where guy's working all the time. Suddenly he's home, right? I don't know about your home, but my wife is definitely the queen of the castle, all right? In a lot of places it's like that. Well, you have a situation where the husband is not really used to being around all the time, and perhaps his wife is not used to him being around all that time. So after a while, he's like, let's go places. I can take you there. I can do stuff. And she's like, I got my own stuff. You figure out your own stuff, which of course can drive her crazy. They drive each other crazy. Another challenge, of course, is people marry for better, for worse, but not for lunch. Right? The famous politician in the United States was Tip O'Neill, who was a Speaker of the House. And he was 40 years in Congress, and he came home, and he liked to tell the story after he retired. He said, I came home, my wife promptly sat me down. She said, Tip, I haven't made you lunch in 40 years, and I'm not about to start now. So you better get an office. And so he did. Very sadly, of course, this can be a time where people have addiction and dependency problems. It's actually a very fast-growing demographic in the United States. And there are widows. Now, of course, the traditional widows, where people, their spouse or partner dies. However, there are other kinds of widows. There are runners' widows, golfers' widows, fishers' widows, hunters' widows. And that's more about, that guy, that obsession. And it can work both ways, by the way. Women are just as guilty of turning their husbands into widowers because of their obsessions. That leads to unnecessary stress. And then sometimes it can lead to MLS. It doesn't mean multiple listing service. It can mean where one spouse, if they've chosen to have a retirement home or marry someplace that they're going to move to, one spouse is a little older, they move to that other place, Florida, Arizona, Tahiti, wherever the place is around the world. But if those spouses still working, maybe they need to work a little longer, or they need to save more money, or it's going to take them a little longer to get out of their business or their practice. Well, that separation is married but living separately. And that is not necessarily a recipe for staying together. In fact, it can likely be a recipe for something called gray divorce, gray being the color of one's hair. This was a study done by Bowling Green State University in Ohio, and they really looked at divorce rates. And what they found is, about 10% of all divorces in 1990 were people aged 50 plus, which are traditionally the long-term marriages, and most people get married in the late 20s, early 30s. By 2009, that had more than doubled. So 25% of all divorces were the gray hairs. And their projection, the researchers, was by 2030, somewhere between 30 and 35% of all divorces were going to be these older divorcees, the grays. Right? And to me, that is ultimately stemming from a lack of common outlooks and values, because people aren't spending time, the couples aren't spending the time to talk about what's really important to them. And if you don't have those conversations, it can be very easy to create very separate lives and then end it in divorce. So most of us, we have a journey. We get up, we know where we're going to go, we're going to work, we're going to school, whatever the case may be. So we know we're the beginning, right? So we have the beginning here, and we have sort of a journey, and then we know where we're going. But transitions are the opposite. Something is ending. You're going to leave your business. You're going to leave your career. And you need to have some other kind of new beginning. But this area here, that's the transition zone. You're not really sure what that's going to be like. How's it going to go? And that can cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of unnecessary stress. And for people who happen to own businesses, that stress will be pressed into the business and all the people they care about in their lives. What we are challenging people to do is a new way of thinking. Now, many of you are looking at this and saying, oh, the glass is half full, therefore I'm an optimist. Or if I say the glass is half empty, that means I'm a pessimist. And what we're actually is challenging that. And what we're saying is the glass is perfect. It's half full of air and half full of wine. Right? It's a new way of thinking, a balanced way of thinking. And that's what's required to make a successful transition and to live well with purpose in a new phase of life. Here's another way of thinking about it. So in the late 20th century, as the concept of retirement was evolving, sometime in your mid to late 60s, or early to mid 60s rather, people started to retire. So you have education, you have this long career, and then you retire, but people didn't live very long, all right? Now, going to the 21st century, you have education, you still have a career. The career will probably last maybe a little longer than your parents' career might be, but then you've got this really long period of life, 20, 25, 30 years, right? Well, that's why we call this time the platinum years. It's not the golden years. And it should be much more interesting, right? Much more integrated, like that framework we talked about earlier. So one of the things we do, all sorts of exercises, and we have books and online assessments and workshops. But this, a couple of exercises I do is this. So this is really two exercises. So one is helping people create a sense of identity outside of work. We ask a whole series of questions, but here's three. Okay? So outside of work, what do I enjoy doing? Outside of work, what gives my life meaning? Outside of work, what do I honor and respect myself for? And as long as you start with that outside of work and all those other questions, you start to evolve more about who you really are outside of that sort of work persona. And when you do that, right, you start to see yourself visually, all right, using your senses. Like, oh, I actually envision myself outside of work. And when you do that, it can be really liberating. On the other hand, we've all gone through multiple transitions in our life. This separate exercise down here. So we have our education, whether it was high school or college or what have you, and then there was a transition. So if you stake that transition, whatever that might be, maybe you were single, then became married. You were married and didn't have kids, and then you had kids. Maybe you were married and you got separated, divorced, what have you. And write down the event, write down either the age or the year if you can't remember. And then, most importantly, what did you learn from that experience? Right? I did this one time. One guy was, kind of funny. He said, and I asked people, would you share one experience? And one said, if I got divorced when I was 52, and had I known more in advance that I was going to get divorced when I was 52, I would have been a lot nicer to my wife earlier in our marriage. Of course, that brought the house down. Everyone was cracking up. So we're not saying that's necessarily it, but if you think about that, as you build up the various transitions you've been and the lessons you've learned, it will really encourage you to realize, what? I can do this too. And for those of you who are advisors and you would be using these kinds of exercises with your clients, or even perhaps in a workshop where you're marketing the programs, it's a way of somebody very tactfully getting their hands around this and saying, oh, I get it. This is what I need to work on. So here's a story of George, who was an accountant for 35 years. It's like to say, I've been doing taxes for 35 years. What else am I going to do? Well, that was all well and good until he had a heart attack and almost died. And he realized, wow, there are a lot of other things I want to do in life, and I don't want to wait anymore. His problem was he was basically the accountant, right? So he hadn't put together any kind of a transition plan. So he attended one of our workshops and he followed up with some private coaching. And he went through and he started filling out that framework. And when I happened to run into him a little while, in fact, I ran into him last night. He said, Paul, it was a few years ago that I went to that workshop, but I followed up with some private coaching with Beth, who was one of the consultants there. And she really helped us. And what he meant by us is he found a junior person and was able to work with that person, give them the confidence, create a buyout. All right. So he financially is, no longer owning the business. And he says, it's great. I work a couple of days a week. I do these other projects. He does some business consulting on the side. He ended up starting an over-the-hill men's softball league. All right. Time with family and his faith. And all of that made sense. All that was integrated, right? Without any of the hassles and the stress and the strain of, being the guy running things all the time. Another experience is somebody, Susan. So Susan is actually a psychologist, and she moved from one part of the country to the other, and she had made a career change. She said, I really don't want to do traditional psychology anymore, so she got into business coaching, and she was working not in her own practice, but as part of a larger entity, so she was basically an employee. And she got to a place where she said, I think I need to do something else, but the way it's organized, if I leave now, I'm not sure the income will all work. And she was sort of consumed by all these fears. So she attended a workshop. She followed up some private coaching. And what was really underneath all of that was that she was afraid that she couldn't make another transition. And when she thought through the transition she'd been through in her life, she said, I've had a number of experiences like this where I've had to sort of figure out who I am and move on. And I can do this. And so she did. And so she was able to figure out financially how it made sense for her and to migrate out. And she's extremely happy now. So these are the 5 areas we ask people to think about as they're going through a major life change. You have to get yourself prepared psychologically, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually. And then lifestyle, which is more related to that framework that I showed earlier. And that's what a lot of people think. I just got to figure out what I got to do. I got to keep busy, right? But if you don't really think through the emotional change and the intellectual challenges and addressing your fears, okay? And perhaps really think more along the lines of, why am I here? Why are we here? Some spiritual awareness. You may find that this transition is less satisfactory and you're kind of shortchanging yourself. So when I complete this particular talk, I bring this slide up. And what I say is there are 3 paths forward. So to the right is the rutted road of dying at your desk. To the left is this rather smooth but not particularly exciting road to traditional retirement or the golden years. But the middle path, the path that can't quite see where it is today, see, that's the road, the path to the platinum years. And if you're willing to do the work, it can be some of the most exciting, vibrant, right, and integrated time of your life for the next 10, 20, or 30 years. So as an advisor, you would have access to all of these and this talk, and we'd be certainly willing to help you figure out how to integrate it in your practice. I mentioned earlier we have a number of programs. So these are 2 programs of self-reflection. So what's next over here, this is for business owners. And it's a short program that helps people sort of get unstuck. This is a program, similar program for for executives and professionals, as I like to say, one for business owners and explorers for the rest of us. And what people get is, there's an online questionnaire. There's a book. Each program has its own book that was written by Jack Beauregard. And then there's a self-discovery guidebook and white paper. And all of that, for a whopping $99, they're able to get unstuck and they're able to really think through, a whole series of thinking about their motivations for wanting to leave. What are their transition goals? How do they rate their expectations and attitudes about the process? How emotionally prepared they actually sort of measure themselves, right? And then they think through about, gee, what are my plans? Are they really meaningful? What are those? And if I've created really good plans, but I haven't acted on them, what's holding me back? We also have taken those programs of self-reflection or self-directed learning, and now we have them available as short coaching programs. And what we mean by that is this is a way for an advisor to help somebody sort of get their toe in the water, right? You don't necessarily have to, take a leap, jump into the deep end of the pool, as it were. Oh, now I'm going to leave my career. Oh no, I'm going to sell my company, or leave it to my kids, or what have you. No, you can go a little slower, and the short coaching problem sort of opens things up as the advisor to little by little getting them comfortable. These are some of the topics. They'll learn to strategically think about their emotions, define what a successful transition means. They start to create goals. They actually, you would be helping them measure their mental and emotional readiness. They do that life transitions exercise. They learn how to apply those transitions to this new. And then they work on the identity exercise, which is that, outside of work. And so all of that helps them gain the confidence. And again, these can be done in face-to-face or over the web, or we're using GoToMeeting today, for example. We also have short workshops, which are more like half days. They're about 4 hours. There's one for business owners, and Explore, which is for the rest of us. Living with Purpose workshop is a total, it's actually a type of it, it's about 12 hours all in. And this is really empowering people who are age 50 plus for creating a purposeful, meaningful life. If you recall that wheel earlier, that framework for purposeful living, it's over 2 days helping somebody brainstorm, with other people and the facilitator, and coming up with written plans, spending some time ahead of time. There's some homework ahead of time, maybe to talk to their spouse or partner about it. Hopefully a spouse or partner might attend too. But when they get through that, they've really written it out, and they've created some really robust decisions about how they're going to live their life moving forward. And the other thing we offer are multi-session. Generally, the programs, each program has either 4 or 8 sessions. One can have a 5th. The Think program is thinking about your business and personal future. It can be applied just for people who don't. For businesses, it can also be reduced in a little bit way for people who are not business owners. And it's really starting to address some of the core fears of what's going on there. The Live program is 7 steps for creating your successful personal transition plan. That is the step-by-step or week-to-week, if you will, basis of doing that framework for purposeful living. It also gets a little deeper into how you make decisions and some of the fears and how to counterbalance those fears. And the last program is Decide, and that's 4 sessions, and that's designed around helping a business owner actually figure out, what do I want to do with my business? How do I create a strategy? How do I create tactics? And then who do I need to help me? And they take that as a basis to go talk to their advisors about, I really thought about 2 or 3 options. Now I need to know the numbers. I need to know how I am personally. Do I need to work on my business? Do I need to increase its value? All those sorts of things. But all that comes from more analysis later by, if you will, the technical expert. But once a business owner has really decided, hey, this is 1 or 2, maybe 3 options that make sense, and I've gotten rid of these other options that they just don't make sense to me personally. I don't want that to be the outcome for my business. That really simplifies things for any advisor that they might be working with. We did mention earlier that we have this proprietary report, the Decision-Making Style, of the DMS, and it's a short questionnaire. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes. And what evolves up from there is these 5 core decision-making styles. And this was research originally done out of Harvard Business School that Jack had discovered. And he created a whole series of questions that help people drill into this, and they learn, what is your primary style? And it's very important to understand that, because each decision-making style, and we do actually use all 5 styles throughout different types of decisions we're making, but we have a tendency towards one. Particularly when it makes really high stakes types of decisions. Each has upsides and downsides. And so we teach advisors how to implement the questionnaire, and then really how to tease out for that client, hey, it's important that you do that, but you got to counterbalance, as an example. if you're an enthusiastic decision maker, you get excited about an idea. This is what I'm going to do. Well, if you get information that is counter to that idea, that's going to somehow temper your enthusiasm, you will subconsciously push away that information, that data, even though it's really important data. Right? So you have to counterbalance that and have a more a whole-minded approach. So this is what people get from making better decisions. They understand about goals they want to achieve. They search for information about the issues. They learn to assess and analyze the issues, make final decisions, and then how to implement their decisions. These are some benefits for you as the advisor. This is a way to, very quickly, 15, 20 minutes, they answer this questionnaire. It's an automated system. And you get a feel for where they are and gives you a sense of maybe I can build a deeper rapport if I know how they make decisions. It can guide how you work with them. It can help you meet their goals. You ultimately, hopefully, will have a better, more positive working relationship because, you're not going to go to somebody who's highly analytical with information where you want trying to get them all excited about it. They need the time to do the analysis first. And ultimately, all of this should drill down where you have an opportunity to make more money, assuming that's your goal, and close more opportunities because you'll have a better feel for how people make decisions and you're helping them make better, more robust decisions. These are elements within that. I won't go through all those, but this is all vetted and it's been used numerous times, hundreds of times at this point now with people. And very consistently, people come back to us and say, yep, you know what, you nailed it. That is how I make decisions. And I laugh now about decisions I've made where I didn't have a whole-minded approach. We also offer advisors a psychological selling best practices guidebooks, and this is helping you dig into the decision making even before you give the decision making style. Various attitudes, expectations, appearances, things that tend to indicate they may make decisions more in a certain line based on that, and then you can use certain words. Of course, once they've actually taken the decision making style, confirming it. This is a way of reinforcing how you communicate with your client so you can most effectively serve them. All our training comes with a 100% money-back guarantee. Right? You complete the basic training, at a certain point we're going to ask you, is this working for us? And what we mean by that, is it working for you, or is it working for us, STPI? All right? If one person says no, whether it's you or it's us, we simply refund your money. So if there's 2 yeses, then we complete the training and move on. If one party says no, we refund your money. You hand us all the materials we've given you, and hopefully we part ways shaking hands. We also have an affiliate program, and this is really for those advisors. You have a website, you don't really see yourself doing coaching or offering workshops, but you want your clients to be aware of this stuff, and hopefully they'll do some self-reflection. At the same time, you want to send a prospect or your own clients to your website to learn about this, not immediately to ours. So here's how it works. There's an agreement, there's login credentials, you fill your profile, you add graphics, and these are the programs of self-reflection. You get ads, right? And essentially what happens then is, the ads will be for either the What's Next self-assessment or the Explore program. And those ads, like all affiliate programs, have data, behind that. And the programming code goes to us. So if someone clicks on the ad on your website, they go to us, our website, to complete the transaction. We know who that is, and we also know through the tracking software where it came from. So we will then tell you, oh, so-and-so just purchased this. You should probably reach out to them. They're thinking of retiring or leaving their business or selling their company, what have you. We do offer, for people who are interested, is a small commission that's paid on that. Again, it's only $99, so we don't pay, it's an awful lot of money. But ideally, this is for those advisors who really want to have a place on their website to talk about transition planning, succession planning, and point their customers to it, point their prospects to it. Then we offer some tools to help motivate this who come to your website, but also tools that you can simply give out to other people and encourage them to visit you and talk to you about what you're offering, not just these affiliate programs, but your other offerings. So in summary, there's really three options for folks to go forward. There's the affiliate, where you offer the two programs of self-reflection, which is the What's Next and Explore. There's no cost to you to be an affiliate, other than whatever it costs you to add a web page, and we give you all the content for that. There's also the Transition Advisor program, where you have access to this programs of self-reflection, and then we teach you through GoToMeeting sessions, the What's Next coaching, Explore coaching, and the half-day workshops. There's a $1,000 fee for that, and then there's a $250 annual system fee. So this is accessing where all of the online assessments are. We have overhead, and we get a charge for it. The actual assessments, rather, are very inexpensive, $25 to $50. All in, you're talking about 7 hours or so of training. The Transition Planning Consultant is much more robust. You get all of those, and then the three private coaching programs, Think, Live, and Decide, as well as the 2-day Living with Purpose workshop. That's a $10,000 fee. It's a much bigger commitment. It's also 40 hours of training. So this is really geared towards those people who want to do coaching. They want to do this consulting. They perhaps already have clients in this mode, and they always wanted to kind of help those people, but they didn't have a process. They didn't have a system. And now we've made it all, and everything is very robust. So we're getting towards the end here. Let me see if there's some questions. I'll go over here now. So one question is, if I start with one, can I go to the other? Yes. So definitely happens. People sometimes start out as affiliates. They get a feel for it. They're starting conversations. And then they come back to be transition advisors. That's fine. We're happy to get started. It's a relatively easy process to get started. And then we've had other people who started out as transition advisors, and they get partway into their training and say, wow, I really want to do this. This is great. I want the whole thing. And so they would give them a $1,000 credit towards this training fee. You don't have to repeat anything. And then you just move forward into that next phase. We've actually had 2 people do that in the past year. So that's how that works. What other questions do we have here? What do we offer for marketing assistance? So what we have is chapter 1 of each of the books. There's Finding a New Owner, which is for the business owners, and 7 Principles for Living with Authenticity, which is the book in the Explore program, or book for the rest of us. We offer those a PDF of chapter 1, which you can use on your website as a free download, or simply hand out to people if you want to be printing them out and handing them out. I've also narrated the book called Finding Your New Owner, so that's available on audible.com, but we give permission to anybody who goes through our training to take that MP3, put it on their website as a download, or it lives on SoundCloud, actually. So there's a way for you to give that as a little audio tidbit, as it were, to generate leads and or just to generate conversation, so you can talk to people about succession and talk to them about a personal transition. We have a whole series of PowerPoints, webinars, so forth. We try to give everybody everything we create. We also have monthly community calls where you'll be invited to join other people on a GoToMeeting session, learn from what other people are doing, talk about what's happening in your market, talk about things, reactions, ideas. So it's a way, like any other sort of online community, where you're sharing best practices, what's happening, learning from each other, and hopefully growing together. Other things, let's see. Sometimes people will come to me and say, gee, Paul, I'm giving a presentations to a CPA society. Have you ever done one? The answer is yes. I've done it at law society, CPA societies, financial planning firm, universities, business consulting, exit planning training organizations. So you think of the organization, trade groups. We've got stuff. You let us know. We'll give you what we have. We don't charge extra to have that. The only time, I should say, that you ever pay us beyond the training fee is the access fee to help cover the overhead of our online systems and what you buy from us, the assessments, the books, and so forth. There is a separate marketing program if you want to have a more formal marketing relationship with us, where you would work with Jack to go out and sort of promote him as an author and share revenue and so forth. But I don't want to muddy the waters today. That's a whole separate thing. What other questions do we have here? So how do people order things online? So we have a system. It would take me a while to get into it, but very similar to how you order anything online. You log in, you put in your credentials, and you go to what's called the dashboard, the advisor dashboard, and then you just click on the various questionnaires. There's 4 different questionnaires that are available for purchase. You order the ones you need. As part of the training process, we use what's called experiential learning. So you actually are a client. So you would receive the online assessment, the questionnaires via email, just as if you were sending them. So Jack is the trainer. So if you were doing What's Next coaching, for example, he would send you the What's Next assessment. So you'd learn what it's like to receive it. And then afterwards, and when you're in sort of the training portion, you learn to send it and how that really works. And I walk people through all of that. So you get to see both sides of the process as a client and also as the coach or the consultant. What else? Okay, got that question already. I would say, how long does it take? Well, I said down below here. So transition advisor is approximately 7 hours or so. It's all GoToMeeting or remote training. The transition planning consultant training can be done, is actually done in 2 phases typically. There's an initial phase, GoToMeeting, where you experience the Think program just as if you were a client. That's actually when we do the test of, is this working for us, yes or no? Assuming there's 2 yeses, then the rest of the training continues. Most people actually fly here to Boston, and we work 1, 2, sometimes 3 people at a time through a classroom type of experience. Other people don't like that. It doesn't work for them, so we do GoToMeeting. And in the case of Australia, we actually have a partner over there who now does the training. Jack initially flew over there to do the training, but now he does that kind of work. If we had a similar situation like that, we could create a partner relationship with somebody elsewhere in the world. I'm sure we might replicate it. What else? Ooh, we are just about out of time here. Let me see if there's any. Okay, I don't see any new questions at this point, so I'm going to wrap it there. And just once again, I am Paul Cronin. This is my email address, the phone number. We have a couple of pages on the website that describe the affiliate program in more detail, as well as the training program in more detail. If you have not already been there, but theplatinumyears.com/affiliate that learns about all of that program, and theplatinumyears.com/training to learn all about the training program. So thanks very much, folks. I appreciate your participating today, and I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and a very successful 2017. Bye now.